Welcome to Cut Bank, Montana, widely regarded as the coldest spot in the lower 48. Situated just south of the Canadian border in northern Montana, the Cut Bank area is home to some of the harshest weather conditions in North America. It was in this rugged setting that the Glacier Electric Cooperative chose Shakespeare fiberglass composite utility poles for their second fiberglass distribution line.
Glacier Electric started in the early 40s in Cut Bank, Montana. The weather conditions in Cut Bank, Montana are unlike any other weather conditions that I know of. It can be 98 degrees in the summer and drop down to 50 below in the wintertime with 100-mile-an-hour winds. So to build a power line that was going to stay up in those days with limited funds was a difficult task. And rebuilding that system today is even more difficult for the current administration because the weather conditions haven't changed, but the expectation of service has.
And the poles that were used at that time were wood poles. They had fairly lengthy spans of wire, and they had storm guys, what we call storm guys, which actually anchor the pole towards the wind, the prevailing wind. And when the line became due for pole changeouts, we thought this would be a great place, being broadside to high winds, to try the strength of these poles.
Yeah, we've got a pole that's going to last us 100 years. We have no doubt in our mind. And we're not ever going to have to worry about changing it or maintaining it once it's in.
We've set wooden poles for quite a number of years, and you see how they stand up in the weather, how they act in different elements and whatnot, and all the aspect of the hardware coming loose. Even on new construction, within a couple of years, you're going to find stuff loose. The wood only stands up so well to weather. Like say, you get used to wood poles. You see how they act over 8-10 years. Fiberglass, we had some set up here probably about 2 or 3 years ago, and you can't tell the difference between the ones you set 3 years ago as to the ones we just got done setting here. They stand up real well. They seem to weather excellent. There's no change in color. The hardware stays tight on them. They just seem to stand up real well.
Some of the things that makes it easier for our people to work with is the maneuverability of the poles. They're a lighter weight, but yet they're still pretty heavy duty as far as their durability. And they're not a real dirty like we've had problems with some wood poles. You're getting all that creosote and penta treat on you at the end of the day. They're really user-friendly as far as a lineman would look at them. They're easier to handle than like a wood pole as far as your equipment. We don't need a heavy-duty line truck or a digger derrick truck to set the poles or move them around from point A to point B that we would with some other types of poles.
This is the third day I've set them, and I'm kind of liking them now because I'd have to say we're probably not as much fatigued with the fiberglass poles because we don't have to horse them around like a wood one, you know. You're looking at a 45 class 4 pole here that, you know, probably only weighs 400 pounds. You're looking at a 45 class 4 wood pole that's probably weighing 1,400 pounds. You just don't grab a hold of one of those and yank it around.
Yeah, I started out with Glacier Electric in 1978 and started as a groundman, worked into the apprenticeship to become a lineman, became a journeyman lineman and a foreman. And I've seen the industry change through the years. The change that I like in the pole industry with fiberglass over wood, but with wood poles, I just didn't know what I had out there. It amazed me. I set a pole 10 years later or 15 years later, I'm out there replacing that pole and it's rotten. All I know is with fiberglass, you've got a consistent material. Every pole's the same, every pole's the same size. Much easier to work with. Makes me want to go out on the line again.
The local Indian reservation here had some concerns about the chemicals that are used in wood tree and wood poles, and they approached us about it, and we said, well, we've got a fiberglass composite pole that has no contaminants on it, and they were really receptive to that fact, and were really excited that we were going to be able to use these in areas of high water tables and other locations where pristine cosmetics we were concerned.
Wood poles, you set them in a swamp or a high water area and they'll get wet through and through. I think anybody that sets poles will realize this. These fiberglass poles, they act like they can sit in water forever and not bother them at all. And they're, a lot of times if you've got a wet area to set them in, you got a problem with getting the equipment in and out. And with these fiberglass poles, in fact, is what we're going to do on this job here is probably just pick them up with a bucket truck and set them like that, because our bucket trucks are a lot lighter than our line truck, and we'll be able to pick them up with the jib arm and the winch and set them right in the hole. So they're a lot easier to handle, and we've got some of them up here that are set in a swampy area, and there again, there's no, like with a wood pole, you get moisture creeping up in them and stuff like this. Fiberglass, they were set 2 years ago and they're still as good as the day they were set.
We started out with 2 poles, one placed in Browning, Montana in a very high wind area, and the other one right at the back of the cut bank warehouse, where the warehouse man could monitor the pole in 80, 90 mile an hour winds that we get in cut bank, Montana. So every wind storm day, he would go to the back of the warehouse, watch out the window and see what the fiberglass pole was doing. He'd report back to me on it, and we got together and met several times. And we really felt like this was a solution to our problems. Yeah, we've evaluated many different types of poles. We've studied steel, fiberglass, wood of course, looked into laminated. We believe fiberglass is the most useful to us. We have wind chills that bottom out to 90 to 100 below zero. And it's a life or death situation when the power goes out. We've got to have reliability in areas like this.
We set wood, steel, and fiberglass poles. Steel poles, you had to treat those with kid gloves. You didn't want to chip the coating off of them. You couldn't really drag them. Matter of fact, we had to put a large heat shrink on the bottom of them before we could set them, just to keep the rocks and stuff away from the pole. And then when we first started setting these fiberglass, you really wanted to be careful with them, because you thought, well, the fiberglass part of it, you thought they were fragile. But knowing what I know now, they're as durable as any wood pole, probably more so than you could ever put up. Because you can tighten on these things here until you can't tighten anymore. And the fiberglass poles don't seem to mind it a bit. You don't have to treat them with kid gloves, they're as tough as nails.
Well, I guess the first thing is seeing is believing. Get some in and try them. You can hear all about them, you can read all about them, you can analyze all the engineering data, and until you have actually tried them and saw for yourself that they do work and work well, that's what it takes.
Shakespeare fiberglass composite utility poles. In the mountains or in your backyard, only one stands tall.